ideal. So started rethinking things, and I've gone through about 4 or 5 iterations of this. I just keep tearing it apart and rebuilding it. But I got some copper strap from Georgia Copper. It was like really cheap for 20-some feet of a remnant. And I came up with this idea to go with copper strap. And instead of making a loop, I made an oval. It's the surface area that's important, so that's why I did that. But I also wanted to make it a remote control thing. So I went on Amazon.com, everyone buys on Amazon, got a little remote controller, so now I can control it. It can be outside, and I tune it with my VNA, my Nano VNA. There's a couple ways of tuning it. You can do it by sound or you can do it by VNA. So I use the VNA. Got a little power switch on the side, activates the whole system.
What's a VNA?
Vector Network Analyzer. It's this little gizmo here. They're really cheap. And
what does it do?
It allows you to measure SWR, losses, any number of things.
So what are you doing with it?
What am I doing with it? I'm just looking at it actually right now.
How does it work with the
Yeah. What I do is, I want to know what frequency it's resonant at. So I usually don't chase any stations or anything like that. It just takes too much time to tune it. So I do a lot of FT8 with the loop. So because I sit on 14074 or 21074 with, well, this is a 2017 15 meter loop. The size of the loop is very important with that. I'm now working toward making a 6 meter one for when 6 meter activity comes back, and we'll see how that goes. You can actually watch your tuning and see when you hit the lowest SWR, okay? And probably SWR isn't the most important thing, but your radio likes it. So once you have it close to where you are, you don't have to use a tuner if you get it to near, and most radios actually have built-in tuners. I use a 7300, so it's got a built-in tuner. But you want to get it there close anyway. So that's basically it. And you want to switch bands, takes a little more tuning, but you just pull the variable capacitor. That's probably the most expensive part of this whole rig. That was like 150 bucks. The rest of it, cheap. I mean, these curtain rod rollers, they're like 8 or 10 bucks on Amazon. The battery was 20 some bucks, 30 bucks, something like that. And the rest was pretty cheap. PVC, this copper strap, I got 22 feet for about 40 bucks. So, plenty of strap to play with.
How's it work?
It works pretty darn good. I wish I brought my logs, but I've worked most of the country, no problem.
What bands does it cover?
20, 17, and 15.
And vouch, because there's lower capacity, they tend to drift a lot, and it can drift a lot very quickly. And he's found out that it drifted so badly that he was running his tools, and it was like, hey, what the heck? What's going on? And of course, he has his homemade version of it.
The charger will charge up to, if you've got 5 batteries or whatever, it will charge up to the battery that's the highest voltage. So you get one that's low and one that's high. The tool picks off the low one and the charger picks off the high one. So you've got a working space about that big. It's just, so if you balance them, then you've got the full amount for each battery.
And that's what this little gizmo, so the nice part about it is you can charge it up once it hits this high voltage. Then what you do is you go into the menu settings, tell it to balance, walk away. Eventually, maybe about half an hour, 45 minutes later, you'll hear it do a double chime. You go back to it and go, oh, okay, it's balanced. Unplug, of course, unplug the charger, wait about a few seconds, then plug it back in, and it'll restart the charging cycle again. And you'll I mean, usually if everything is fairly healthy, you'll be somewhere between 10 to 15. I've seen on a good day, 3 to 5 millivolts difference between the cells, and worse, maybe 10. But your tool will love it. You'll get better runtime because of the balance.
Okay, cool. So I've got sort of this long-standing idea that I eventually want to get a radio kit that I can pack down that will fit in the bags on my bicycle. All right, not there yet. Particularly the battery pack I have is way too big and heavy, but I do have one of these antennas. Anybody have one of these?
Yeah.
Yeah, or something similar to it. They kind of suck. And so I used to use it on a camera tripod. And the problem with using it on a camera tripod is it's up this high and it's really wobbly unless you bring like guy wires and stuff to stake it down to the ground. And at that point, how much crap are you packing along in order to use a tiny little antenna? So I tried to make a spike to hold it in the ground, and that didn't work so well, just kind of fall over. And also, when it's up that high on top of the mic stand, the SWR really sucks for the higher bands because the radials are sort of drooping down at a weird angle. And then I was at TorqueFest, and there's this dude selling a broken microphone stand, like the one I think Billy's got kind of over there.
It's in the pickup,
Yeah, oh, you put it away? Okay. So if you ever see one of those, they got like a little squat tripod. And so I saw this, like I wanted like $2 for it. So all I did was it took way more time than it should have, but I had a couple of washers and a SO239 mobile mount and finagled the darn thing in there after removing the pole. And so now I've got this thing that sits pretty square on the ground. And you can't really see it anymore, but I can put that antenna on it, or I can set it up on top of something, and it won't blow over, and I don't have to stake it to the ground, and I don't have to bring ropes or anything, and yeah, it just works great. I think the farthest contact I've gotten off of that antenna and this thing was doing Parks on the Air down at the Skyway Bridge, and I talked to a dude in Wyoming with it. So.
What antenna is that?
Oh, it's a.
I'm gonna get to the bottom.
Oh, he's over here. That's one.
It's a moonraker.
Oh no. It's a Comet HFJ 350.
Toy box?
No, the toy box is the one that has the extra loading coil.
Right.
For if you want to have a joke about an antenna this long on 160.
Yeah.
You got your flying lead down
Yeah.
here with your frequency
that
and your
lead.
bandwidth, and then you got the.
Are they impossible to get a new one?
No, I'm just
Oh, yeah.
telling you.
Yeah. I've got a little elbow connector for it because if I'm just listening, I just screw it onto the back of the radio. You really can't operate it like that. It needs the coax. It performs horribly screwed right into the back of the radio. I've done it, but yeah.
What band?
Oh, this thing's multi-band. It does like whatever. Yeah. Yeah, it does everything. It 80 through 6 meters, but
160 to 2200.
obviously it performs pretty poorly on the lower bands because, like, at most, what is it, 5 feet tall?
And you
Yeah.
say you ran radials with that too?
You have to. You absolutely have
So
to.
what do you do for radio? Like,
Oh, I've got a spool of wire. It's about 4 of them. They're about 15 feet long.
Okay.
Sometimes you gotta arrange them in weird patterns to make it actually tune up. But yeah, the only thing DIY about it was the mount for it. So.
And then you can plug in every damn thing we have into it, and it'll charge everything. We basically charge everything we own kind of 1.5 times. And then I just stick a solar panel in it. It takes maybe 3 hours, 2.5 hours to recharge. I got a nice big unfolding solar panel I put into it, so that's the magic box. What's up?
Where did you get the solar controller?
I played with a cheap Chinese one that I did not like, and then I tried to build my own out of constituent components, and that went hilariously bad. So I bought the West Mountain Radio Epic Power Gate, and it's a lovely. I mean, it's a lovely product.
It is.
It's a little. I mean, they're very proud of it when they set the price. But to be honest with you,
But clearly you didn't have good experiences elsewhere.
No, but I probably didn't spend as much on all my experiments as buying one of those. They're
That's
a
what I
little
was- that's what I was wondering which one you
But
used.
then I ended up using the West Mountain. Yeah, the Chinese one was okay. I wasn't satisfied with it, and it wasn't
Yeah.
RF quiet, and that was
Yeah.
the biggest problem.
Well,
West
I was
Mountain
gonna
radio
ask you
one
about the
is,
5 volts. I mean, is that RF quiet?
I've never heard a sound out, never heard a peep
Where
out
did
of
you
it.
get the 5 volt converters, the 5 volt outputs?
Oh, these are 12 volt for your car.
No,
Everything here is regular cigarette lighter.
Don't you have you said you had USB output on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're right here. So basically, I bought.
So where did you get that though?
What do you mean? Physically buy it, or
So
everything is 12 volt, and then it does the 12 volt conversion inside.
inside
This is meant to install in a car.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where did you?
Walmart.
So where did you?
Amazon,
Okay.
eBay, Amazon.
Well, not a lot of 5 volt converters from 12 to 5 are noisy RF.
Yeah, I was kind of
That's
expecting
why I was
that.
asking.
And you can actually turn them off individually. So I
Okay.
was kind of expecting that, and it turned out to be. And then the real find was this. I don't remember the brand name, but if you just search for battery monitor on Amazon, this battery monitor is amazing. I used a bunch. It's got a huge shunt on the inside, and my buddy liked it so much they make a 500 amp version with a giant shunt, and he put one on his RV, and he loves it. And it's apparently super popular. I just got lucky when I bought it. So, but it's great. It's really pretty accurate. It tells me what battery life is left. It's never lied to me. So
Oh, yeah.
I know you. I'm sure you know which one it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I got one for my, what do you call it, my APC UPS.
You can take it apart later. I know you want to look at the back.
Question on that,
that.
on the monitor, does it draw current when you're not using it?
No, you'll see it. Actually, that's why I kept pushing the button. It goes to sleep. I mean, the whole thing. If I just leave it, if I leave it like that, the monitor stays connected, and the parasitic drain. I haven't charged it. You're not supposed to leave it 100%. Please don't yell at me. I haven't plugged this in to be charged in just before we moved on the boat, so that'd be
So
like
it doesn't have a parasitic
probably
draw?
June, and
So it
it's
doesn't have-
it's still showing
Okay,
100%.
so it doesn't have a parasitic draw?
If it does, it's too
So-
small.
a lot of
to
them
measure.
do.
Actually,
I
the
thought
Life
that.
PO4 batteries now, you can leave it 100%, it's not gonna hurt
Yeah.
it.
But no, it's been great. No, it hasn't had no issues with it, and it's
Cool.
works
And
great for
more-
me.
As a lot of you know, I'm a retired electrical engineer, and I have a friend who's a retired mechanical engineer, and sometimes we get together and make a whole engineer and work on projects. You'll have some mechanical thing, you'll have some electronic stuff taken apart, I'll have an electronic thing, and I'll need some mechanical support. So he called me, and his wife had a major problem with her margarita machine. And he'd torn it apart, he thought he found a problem on the board, he used to make boards, and said, well, could you come over, because I plugged this in and it blows fuses. I'm like, so I've been collecting some components to make this up for the future for using like conditioning capacitors and radios. So I took it over there, and as I'm looking at his board, finding out that the bridge rectifier diodes are shorted across it, and it doesn't have a transformer. All right, so I brought him up and I kind of laid out a schematic a little bit, and he built it up for me because that's his thing. And so what we've got here, oh, by the way, we did get his margarita machine working. So what we got here is basically a power cord going into an outlet with a switch, going into an isolation transformer that is a 250 VA. And then in series is a 200 watt incandescent lamp. It's being used as a current limiter. I'll explain in a moment. And then it goes to a variac. Now variacs are basically a single coil on a magnetic material that you have an input and the output on the same coil. Now you can, depending upon where the wiper goes, will determine what your output voltage is, because it's a ratio between the number of turns on each side. Now, what that means though is that variac, if you hook it up to your line and hook it up to house power, it's live. In other words, one side's hot and one side's ground. So if you stand in a puddle, touch it, bang. So you don't want to do that. So that's why we got the isolation transformer. Now, that one happens to be 250 VA, which means that the voltage and the amperage, if this is the voltage waveform, and this is the amperage waveform. In other words, it doesn't really matter if you have a power factor of 1 or it's something less than that. It's still the transformer has to put that out. And reason that's the reason that's important is because they rate these as VA instead of watts. Watts is like current times voltage. Well, that's the real part. So when the current and the voltage go out of phase, what happens is you get the part that doesn't overlap, and that's the imaginary part. And so the lamp at 200 watts, if you take 200 and divide it by 125, typically our house voltage is 120, you get like 1.6 amps. So if I were to actually short the lamp across the isolation transformer and power up the lamp, the most I'm going to get is I'm going to get a bright lamp, and it limits the amount of current. So in other words, if I short it out, I don't blow things up, okay? And you can tell how much current's going through by how bright it is. It's like a fuse in series. And then I can adjust the voltage from the variac. So what we've got here is a Helicrafter radio that I purchased at SPARC Fest about a year ago, and I haven't played with it yet, other than just had a little nick on the power cord that taped it up. So I took the cover off because when you go to conditioned capacitor, let's talk about that for a second. What am I talking about when I say conditioning a capacitor? Capacitors, the power capacitors are aluminum electrolytic. So what happens is that the chemistry inside that capacitor will ultimately fail by its very nature. And it's almost like a battery that where it kind of goes dead, like an iCAD, a chargeable. So what happens is that the voltage rating on that capacitor, it'll decrease as the age of it's not being used. It continues, so that it's actually good to periodically turn your radios on and leave them powered up for a few hours. And if you got old ones, turn them on, let them run, listen to them, because basically it improves the chemistry so that the capacitor can withstand the voltage. So that's the reason what we do is we bring it up like at 25 volts AC and leave it sit there for like 12 hours and recondition those caps and bring it up to 50, let it sit for another 12 hours, bring it up to 75 volts and let it sit there for another 12 hours. And we're going to turn this on. So I haven't done this. Now, I was in high school once in shop class, and we built these little power supply, like little variable power supply kits as part of the shop class. And one of the guys, he put the capacitor wrong and it blew up. So they can do that, and you don't really want that. So what we're going to do is that well, okay, so anyhow, so currently I don't have this turned on, but I just turned on the switch, which now I've got a voltage here, and you can see I'm drawing some current because this variac I paid less than 10 bucks for, and it's out of the 40s. So the magnetics is not the perfect, so there's some inefficiency in it, and it's like leakage current kind of in the way it's working. So what I'm going to do is, and I'm currently set at 0 volts there, and then I'm going to turn this guy on, reach around, there we go, it's this one. There we go, so this guy. So now what we're going to do is we're going to crank it up to like about 25 volts here. I know that from the meter from the markings on here that it's about 25. I've measured it before. So basically that's what it is. So it's a capacitor conditioning current. You can see a little bit of dimness in here. See, it's not hot electrically. But you got all these little caps in there, and so I know you had turned this on because Pat had said that. So I'll crank it up some more. So it's
just brought it up with a variac.
You brought it up with a variac. Same thing that I'm doing right now. So it's like 50 volts right now. So you can see it's not drawing excessive current. It's turned on. You can see the lamps on, and that's really what it's all about. So the whole point is to, again, for his margarita machine, I said, well, we can put this together and use it because we can crank it up some and just see that if it shorts out, we'll know. We can check the voltage, and we're just not smoking things.
So I have a Flex radio, and I have only one antenna at the time. So at my old house I had 3, and it has a lot of antenna ports. So I was looking at new antennas that I could add to it to just get more antennas, basically. I was thinking of doing a inverted L, but then I had to put up a mast, and I was searching around and I found this loop on ground antenna. So it is by kk5jy.net, has like all the information you could want about this antenna. It is a wire antenna that's 15 feet on the side, making a square like you can see here. And it has an isolation transformer. It's almost very similar to what we've got here, but significantly smaller. So the antenna is directional and it's receive only. It's literally on the ground. I've got a picture of it on the next slide. and you get directivity and off the corners from where you attach it from. So here it is in my yard. I put it in with tent stakes first to test it out and make sure that it would actually work at all before I made it more permanent. And so you can see I've kind of just put it off to the side, and I've got it tacked down with landscaping staples now. So supposedly it'll disappear into the ground and I'll be able to mow over it. And I've kind of been letting my lawn grow. I'm gonna test out that theory tomorrow. Here it is from further away, so you can't really see them, but it's around that tree there. So it's off. I put the wire is in the bushes, so I kind of crawled under the bushes a little bit to put it in there. And then my vertical, you can barely see it on the top there. It was windy, so it's kind of curved over a little bit. So here is the part that I built. It's a isolation transformer. It's got 2 turns on one side, and it's either 5 or 6 turns on the other side, and that is depending on whether you use 75 ohm or 50 ohm. So I had some leftover RJ6, so I just used that. So it's 5 turns for that. The formula is a squared ratio of turns, and then divided by the other side is 450 ohms on the antenna side. Then I put an F connector on there, and this is what the actual device looked like. So I was looking for some thin wire. I had some wire wrap wire from my college board days when I was putting boards together, but I couldn't find the spool that I had, and I only had like 2-inch pieces, and to do 5 turns you need like 8 inches. And I called Charles to see if he had some. He's like, oh, just use a Cat 5 cable and cut it open. And that was a little too thick for that time. This thing's about this big, so it was a little too thick for that. I put it out there with the Cat 5 cables in there, and it didn't work. There was no signal at all. So I got some 36 gauge magnet wire and wrapped that around there, and then soldered it, unsoldered the Cat 5 and resoldered it. So that's why it looks a little sloppy. But stainless steel screws, and that's a number 73 binocular core ferrite. Here's what it looks like in the wild. I'll probably put some leather on it, but it's a pretty tight case, and the other guy used the same one and said it worked good for a year. I just put this in last weekend, so I haven't had a ton of time to test it in real life, but here's a pan adapter view of it. On the top is the log on the ground, and on the bottom is my 0.5 vertical. You can see the noise floor is probably negative 130 on that one, and we've got negative 110 over on the vertical. So the signals are a little bit brighter on the vertical, but it's much clearer on the log or loop on the ground. So I think the Flex has diversity reception, so you can put one antenna on one ear and one on the other, and I think this will work well for that case. But we'll see how it goes. I was doing some FT8 with it, and I have one of the lobes is pointed towards Bouvet, so.
Coincidence.
Yeah. Here's the parts list. I used 60 feet, 14 gauge, THHN, $14 from Amazon. The box was $2.50. The ferrite was 79 cents. The box and the ferrite I got from Mauser. The rest of this stuff was from Amazon. The magnet wire, I didn't. If you already have it, you don't have to buy it because you only need like a foot. F connectors $1.25. The landscape staples were $14. If you have stainless screws, I would use them. The box came with little screws, and I only had it out there for overnight once, and the screws were already soured on that, so I used the stainless screws. I bought a box of them, and I put those into the box to replace those screws, as well as for the terminals. And then 75 ohm coax is, I already had that, so I didn't pay for that. So like not counting the wire and this landscape staples, it's like $5 for the transformer. It's not grounded, and I think for similar reasons why you were mentioning how you're not grounded there. So it's it's similar to a beverage if you don't have room for a beverage, but you don't. In this case, you don't ground it since it's looped. And that's it. Any questions?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I just read about this the other day as well, Pat, and I think, and it helped me out if I understand this properly, it doesn't really amplify your signal, but because your noise floor is so much
Yeah.
quieter, you can hear better.
And you can preamp it too. I didn't have the preamp on in that, but you can put it up, you know, plus 24 dB, and it kind of fluffs out the CW, but it does give you more signal.
What kind of bandwidth do you have on?
It works from, I've used it on 160. I mean, it's full. It here's on 160, and it's down to 20. It wasn't so great, and it's hit or miss. But it's on 80 is where it seems to be the sweet spot.
It's receive only.
Yeah, it's receive only. Yeah, yeah. It's not a transmit.